Welcome to Redhead Rewriting Reality by Kimberly Sue Iverson, the story of my life as I figure out who I am after a lifetime of abuse and share my journey with that. Sharing my journey of building my author career, the struggles, bettering self, and creating a new life. I'm a multi-genre author who's published more than 53 stories and coming to you from the Pacific Northwest. And this podcast is for you because, like me, you love stories, journeys, and you just want to relax for a bit. So let me take care of you. This audio is intended for an adult audience. Themes and topics may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Now, get yourself comfy and make yourself at home, and let's dive in. This week we are reading Pinocchio, chapters 26 through 30. I apologize for jumping right into the stories the past month or so too. I have been extra depleted from pain and didn't have the time to record as it was, so just jumped in so I could get it done and out. That's why I often prefer getting a bunch ready and up in case of those situations, but it's the depletion of energy that can be a cause. Then trying to get daily work done for the dogs in the house, because old dogs don't tend to have patience when they have to go potty, not unless you want to clean a mess. So I have been considering renaming this podcast, because when I first started it, it was just for an audio version of my blog, and I used the name I'd had, Redhead Rewriting Reality, that I was for an alternate place to post my personal blogs. It also sounds fun and rhymey, but as it has evolved and I wanted to share more of your work or discuss books and not just my own, the name feels more self-focused or singular focused, hence Redhead, and not focused on us as a whole, us being who this is geared toward, you, readers, people wanting to use this to relax and unwind at night, or any time of day, really. I have felt for over a few months that the Redhead one just feels less like it encompasses us as a whole and more as a me and mine. And I don't want that. I want it around stories, life, you, me. So I'm giving a lot of thought to renaming this, and I would love to hear suggestions if you have them. I'm looking for something fairly short and catchy, a vibe that can encompass stories, whether it's writing, books, yours, mine, all of us sharing stories. And yes, I will still keep talking about my work and my writing as that comes up too, and keep sharing the classic books. You can always suggest books, just make sure that they are on the American Literature site or they are on the Project Gutenberg, or I know a lot of people will share their work through Reddit for people like me or like other podcasters and YouTubers to read, as long as they give them the credit and where they got it from, or at least, that's what I would do. I know some don't even say where they read them from, and you see in the comments people will give them credit, and that's not me. I want to give those people credit. So if you come across those kind of things too on Reddit or other sites where that person would love to have it read and love to get it out there, my only limitation, as I've said before, is obviously anything that could get me cut off and banned from a channel. Obviously those rules change through time and through whatever might be happening in the world, so that's why I don't tend to focus on too much like political things, even when people are like, that's not political. Okay, a lot of stuff is being made political and used as political fodder for each other just to freaking cause issues. So it could be political even if it doesn't seem political. And a lot of channels and all that will get in trouble for that kind of stuff. And I don't want to cause trouble for my channel. But then also there is, more sexual stuff. So it's just things that I want to be able to keep posting without being screwed over on the channel. Using my real short name on socials, the instant that I try to switch to my shortened version of name, I see it's like this weird instantaneous, look, I'm this political radio talk show host person, and I'm not the person I've been this whole time, because I instantly will get people tagging me as her, and instantly people will start sending me these news links. I think they're stories that she probably discusses, and I'm going, really? So I can only ever use my full name on socials unless I want to deal with this kind of stuff. I can't even reclaim my domain because she bought the domain for my short name and then redirected it to her name. So even just using the short version of my name as a domain will never be possible unless I want to somehow spend a lot of money to get it from her, probably, which will not be happening. So that is another thing that I will be adjusting as well. As you will notice that I will probably open up a pen name, which is something I've been considering for actually a few years. And then there was 2 pen names I had actually come up with many years ago. One was going to be for extra steamy work, and then one I come up with from my family heritage. I looked back on my family tree on my dad's side, the Norwegian side, and I had come up with the name from there. So I will probably be putting out work under those 2 names just to also help, because it's kind of shocking when I experiment with names on socials and names on a lot of other stuff, how I finally get reach on my posts and my work when I actually don't use my name and I post under something different. It instantly will go and actually get seen, even though I've never engaged in behavior to make anything get squashed online. But it's just, I think, because my name is associated with that radio talk show host, and she has dealt with a lot of that online because of the stuff she's discussed. And anyone who's followed me has heard me discuss this plenty of times. It's an ongoing frustration. I have had to block people a lot of the time who, even with explanations that I am not that person, after every episode, they would send me messages, and some of them would get like a vulgar, flirtatious kind of attitude. And if I tried to say, I am not that person, I have no clue what you are discussing, because obviously I am not the one that put out that episode of whatever she discussed, so I have no clue what you are discussing. And I remember this one guy, like, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. And he was convinced that even with me trying to explain I was not this person, that I was like playing a game with him or something. I don't even know. I had to block him on every social media. I had to block him on my website. I had to block him from my email. I had to block him everywhere that I could, because he was showing up everywhere. All because he thought I was this other person. So if you ever see me constantly switching stuff and you're new to all my sites or this. That's why you'll see me switch stuff a lot as an experiment to see what happens when I do that. And it's an ongoing frustration to try to battle against that. I had noticed even the retailers, particularly Amazon especially, I had had a lot of struggles with during the time that this woman was getting a lot of the social media sites to bury her because of what she was discussing around the pokey pokey back then. Even though it was real information, sites didn't want you discussing it at all. So I noticed during that time especially, every sale went like completely cold on all my work. And if you searched my name or my work, I was buried so deep in search results, even with the specific exact name of my work and my name I was under, you had to scroll for pages to even come across it. As I was told by many people, they were like, I can't find your work if I search it. So then I would have to send links specific to that book, which is very exhausting to gather when somebody wanted that specific book, unless they were going to do the work to really dig deep to find it. So that's partly why I was going, maybe this is also the time to finally get pen names up that are not under my own name so that I could use those to spill over to my work where I have the biggest catalog. Because you would think with 53 plus stories out there, it would be pretty easy to find my work. But it's not. And it's an ongoing frustration to sell work that nobody gets to see unless they work that hard to get. So there's going to be those things that you start probably also seeing me talk about and discuss, other pen names, as well as, like I said, changing this out. Because I thought going with my full name would end up over time helping me. And let me tell you, it hasn't. So just be aware of that. And if you have any ideas, as I said, for this, I would love your help and love the information. Also, just remember too that I would likely have to use it as a username. So if it's taken or it's just way too long, I likely would not be able to use something like that because I would like one username possibly, which is really hard to find in this day and age, to find not only a name not being used, but then a username. I think TikTok and what's the other one? Maybe Instagram is the ones that are usually the hardest to find. And yes, I do have TikTok. It's just basically don't ever use it. If I do, it's like Snapchat. I'm just there playing with the AI filters because I think they're fun and entertaining to joke around with and make. So, as I said, if you have any of those ideas, I would love the help, and let me know what you got on any place in the comments, or you can send me a message at any time. We will see if I come up with something good that this can be. I don't care if it's got a little snark to it. I don't care if it's a little extra sweet. Just as long as it's something that would catch the attention and have the vibe, which is like, it could mean a bunch of stuff because I like those double entendres. And then I like stuff that has a bit of playfulness, but as I said, it just catches your eye usually, and it can be easily remembered. So today, as I said, we are reading Pinocchio chapters 26 to 30, read by your host, Kimberly Sue Iverson. Chapter 26. The terrible dogfish. The following day, Pinocchio went to the government school. Imagine the delight of all the little rogues when they saw a puppet walk into their school. They set up a roar of laughter that never ended. They played him all sorts of tricks. One boy carried off his cap. Another pulled his jacket behind. One tried to give him a pair of inky mustachios just under his nose, and another attempted to tie strings to his feet and hands to make him dance. For a short time, Pinocchio pretended not to care, and got on as well as he could. But at last, losing all patience, he turned to those who were teasing him most and making game of him, and said to them, looking very angry, "Beware, boys! I have not come here to be your buffoon. I respect others, and I intend to be respected." "Well said, boaster! You have spoken like a book," howled the young rascals, convulsed with mad laughter, and one of them, more impertinent than the others, stretched out his hand, intending to seize the puppet by the end of his nose. But he was not in time, for Pinocchio stuck his leg out from under the table and gave him a great kick on his shins. "Oh, what hard feet!" roared the boy, rubbing the bruise that the puppet had given him. "And what elbows! Even harder than his feet," said another, who for his rude tricks had received a blow in the stomach. But nevertheless the kick and the blow acquired at once for Pinocchio the sympathy and the esteem of all the boys in the school. They all made friends with him and liked him heartily. And even the master praised him, for he found him attentive, studious, and intelligent, always the first to come to school and the last to leave when school was over. But he had one fault. He made too many friends, and amongst them were several young rascals, well known for their dislike to study and love of mischief. The master warned him every day, and even the good fairy never failed to tell him and to repeat constantly, "Take care, Pinocchio. Those bad schoolfellows of yours will end sooner or later by making you lose all love of study, and perhaps they may even bring upon you some great misfortune." "There is no fear of that," answered the puppet, shrugging his shoulders and touching his forehead as much as to say, "There is so much sense here." Now it happened that one fine day, as he was on his way to school, he met several of his usual companions, who coming up to him asked, "Have you heard the great news?" "No." "In the sea near here a dogfish has appeared as big as a mountain." "Not really? Can it be the same dogfish that was there when my papa was drowned?" "We are going to the shore to see him. Will you come with us?" "No, I am going to school." "What matters school? We can go to school tomorrow. Whether we have a lesson more or a lesson less, we shall always remain the same donkeys." "But what will master say?" "The master may say what he likes. He is paid on purpose to grumble all day." "And my mamma?" "Mammas know nothing," answered those bad little boys. "Do you know what I will do?" said Pinocchio. "I have reasons for wishing to see the dogfish, but I will go and see him when school is over." "Poor donkey!" exclaimed one of the number. Do you suppose that a fish of that size will wait your convenience? As soon as he is tired of being here, he will start for another place, and then it will be too late. How long does it take to go from here to the shore? Asked the puppet. We can be there and back in an hour. Then away! Shouted Pinocchio, and he who runs fastest is the best. Having thus given the signal to start, the boys, with their books and copybooks under their arms, rushed off across the fields, and Pinocchio was always the first. He seemed to have wings to his feet. From time to time he turned to jeer at his companions, who were some distance behind, and seeing them panting for breath, covered with dust, and their tongues hanging out of their mouths, he laughed heartily. The unfortunate boy little knew what terrors and horrible disasters he was going to meet with. Chapter 27. Pinocchio is arrested by the gendarmes. When he arrived on the shore, Pinocchio looked out to sea, but he saw no dogfish. The sea was as smooth as a crystal mirror. "Where is the dogfish?" he asked, turning to his companions. "He must have gone to have his breakfast," said one of them, laughing. "Or he has thrown himself onto his bed to have a little nap," added another, laughing still louder. From their absurd answers and silly laughter, Pinocchio perceived that his companions had been making a fool of him in inducing him to believe a tale with no truth in it. Taking it very badly, he said to them angrily, "And now may I ask what fun you could find in deceiving me with the story of the dogfish?" "Oh, it was great fun," answered the little rascals in chorus. "And in what did it consist?" "In making you miss school and persuading you to come with us. Are you not ashamed of being always so punctual and so diligent with your lessons? Are you not ashamed of studying so hard? And if I study hard, what concern is it of yours? It concerns us excessively, because it makes us appear in a bad light to the master. Why? Because boys who study make those who, like us, have no wish to learn, seem worse by comparison, and that is too bad. We too have our pride. Then what must I do to please you? You must follow our example and hate school, lessons, and the master, our three greatest enemies. And if I wish to continue my studies, in that case we will have nothing more to do with you, and at the first opportunity we will make you pay for it." "Really," said the puppet, shaking his head, "you make me inclined to laugh." Pinocchio," shouted the biggest of the boys, confronting him, "none of your superior airs. Don't come here to crow over us, for if you are not afraid of us, we are not afraid of you. Remember that you are a one against 7 of us." "7? Like the 7 deadly sins?" said Pinocchio with a shout of laughter. "Listen to him! He has insulted us all. He called us the 7 deadly sins. Take that to begin with and keep it for your supper tonight," said one of the boys. And so saying, he gave him a blow on the head with his fist. But it was give and take, for the puppet, as was to be expected, immediately returned the blow, and the fight in a moment became general and desperate. Pinocchio, although he was one alone, defended himself like a hero. He used his feet, which were of the hardest wood, to such purpose that he kept his enemies at a respectful distance. Wherever they touched, they left a bruise by way of reminder. The boys, becoming furious at not being able to measure themselves hand to hand with the puppet, had recourse to other weapons. Loosening their satchels, they commenced throwing their school books at him. Grammars, dictionaries, spelling books, geography books, and other scholastic works. But Pinocchio was quick and had sharp eyes, and always managed to duck in time, so that the books passed over his head and all fell into the sea. Imagine the astonishment of the fish! Thinking that the books were something to eat, they all arrived in shoals, but having tasted a page or two, or a frontispiece, they spat it quickly out and made a wry face that seemed to say, "It isn't food for us. We are accustomed to something much better." The battle, meantime, had become fiercer than ever, when a big crab who had come out of the water and had climbed slowly up on the shore called out in a hoarse voice that sounded like a trumpet with a bad cold, "Have done with that, you young ruffians, for you are nothing else. These hand-to-hand fights between boys seldom finish well. Some disaster is sure to happen." Poor crab! He might as well have preached to the wind. Even that young rascal Pinocchio, turning around, looked at him mockingly and said rudely, "Hold your tongue, you tiresome crab! You had better suck some licorice lozenges to cure that cold in your throat." Just then the boys, who had no more books of their own to throw, spied at a little distance the satchel that belonged to Pinocchio, and they took possession of it. Amongst the books there was one bound in strong cardboard, with the back and points of parchment. It was a treatise on arithmetic. One of the boys seized this volume, and aiming it at Pinocchio's head, threw it at him with all the force he could muster. But instead of hitting the puppet, it struck one of his companions on the temple, who, turning as white as a sheet, said only, "Oh, mother, help, I am dying," and fell his whole length on the sand. Thinking he was dead, the terrified boys ran off as hard as their legs could carry them, and in a few minutes they were out of sight. But Pinocchio remained, although from grief and fright he was more dead than alive. Nevertheless, he ran and soaked his handkerchief in the sea, and began to bathe the temples of his poor schoolfellow. Crying bitterly in his despair, he kept calling him by name and saying to him, "Eugene! My poor Eugene! Open your eyes and look at me. Why do you not answer? I did not do it. Indeed, it was not I that hurt you so. Believe me, it was not. Open your eyes, Eugene. If you keep your eyes shut, I shall die too. Oh, what shall I do? How shall I ever return home? How can I ever have the courage to go back to my good mamma? What will become of me? Where can I fly to? Oh, how much better it would have been, 1,000 times better, if I had only gone to school. Why did I listen to my companions? They have been my ruin. The master said to me, and my mamma repeated it often, 'Beware of bad companions.' Oh dear, what will become of me? What will become of me? What will become of me?" And Pinocchio began to cry and sob, and to strike his head with his fists, and to call poor Eugene by his name. Suddenly he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. He turned and saw 2 soldiers. "What are you doing there, lying on the ground?" they asked Pinocchio. "I am helping my schoolfellow." "Has he been hurt?" "So it seems." "Hurt indeed," said one of them, stooping down and examining Eugene closely. "This boy has been wounded in the temple." "Who wounded him?" "Not I," stammered the puppet breathlessly. "If it was not you, who then did it?" "Not I," repeated Pinocchio. "And with what was he wounded?" "With this book." And the puppet picked up from the ground the treatise on arithmetic, bound in cardboard and parchment, and showed it to the soldier. "And to whom does this belong?" "To me." "That is enough. Nothing more is wanted. Get up and come with us at once." "But I—" "Come along with us." "But I am innocent." "Come along with us." Before they left, the soldiers called some fishermen who were passing at that moment near the shore in their boat, and said to them, "We give this boy who has been wounded in the head in your charge. Carry him to your house and nurse him. Tomorrow we will come and see him." They then turned to Pinocchio, and having placed him between them, they said to him in a commanding voice, "Forward, and walk quickly, or it will be the worse for you." Without requiring it to be repeated, the puppet set out along the road leading to the village. But the poor little devil hardly knew where he was. He thought he must be dreaming, and what a dreadful dream! He was beside himself. He saw double, his legs shook, his tongue clung to the roof of his mouth, and yet he could not utter a word. And yet in the midst of his stupefaction and apathy, his heart was pierced by a cruel thorn. The thought that he would pass under the windows of the good fairy's house between the soldiers. He would rather have died. They had already reached the village when a gust of wind blew Pinocchio's cap off his head and carried it 10 yards off. "Will you permit me," said the puppet to the soldiers, "to go and get my cap?" "Go then, but be quick about it." The puppet went and picked up his cap, but instead of putting it on his head, he took it between his teeth and began to run as hard as he could towards the seashore. The soldiers, thinking it would be difficult to overtake him, sent after him a large mastiff who had won the first prizes at all the dog races. Pinocchio ran, but the dog ran faster. The people came to their windows and crowded into the street in their anxiety to see the end of the desperate race. Chapter 28. Pinocchio escapes being fried like a fish. There came a moment in this desperate race, a terrible moment, when Pinocchio thought himself lost. For Alidoro the mastiff had run so swiftly that he had nearly come up with him. The puppet could hear the panting of the dreadful beast close behind him. There was not a hand's breadth between them. He could even feel the dog's hot breath. Fortunately, the shore was close and the sea but a few steps off. As soon as he reached the sands, the puppet made a wonderful leap. A frog could have done no better, and plunged into the water. Alidoro, on the contrary, wished to stop himself, but carried away by the impetus of the race, he also went into the sea. The unfortunate dog could not swim, but he made great efforts to keep himself afloat with his paws. But the more he struggled, the farther he sank head downwards under the water. When he rose to the surface again, his eyes were rolling with terror, and he barked out, "I am drowning! I am drowning!" "Drown!" shouted Pinocchio from a distance, seeing himself safe from all danger. "Help me, dear Pinocchio! Save me from death!" At that agonizing cry, the puppet, who had in reality an excellent heart, was moved with compassion, and turning to the dog, he said, "But if I save your life, will you promise to give me no further annoyance and not to run after me?" I promise! Be quick for pity's sake, for if you delay another half-minute I shall be dead." Pinocchio hesitated, but remembering that his father had often told him that a good action is never lost, he swam to Alidoro, and taking hold of his tail with both hands, brought him safe and sound unto the dry sand of the beach. The poor dog could not stand. He had drunk so much salt water that he was like a balloon. The puppet, however, not wishing to trust him too far, thought it more prudent to jump again into the water. When he had swum some distance from the shore, he called out to the friend he had rescued, "Goodbye, Alidoro! A good journey to you, and take my compliments to all at home." "Goodbye, Pinocchio," answered the dog. "A thousand thanks for having saved my life. You have done me a great service, and in this world what is given is returned. If an occasion offers, I shall not forget it." Pinocchio swam on, keeping always near the land. At last he thought that he had reached a safe place. Giving a look along the shore, he saw amongst the rocks a kind of cave, from which a cloud of smoke was ascending. "In that cave," he said to himself, "there must be a fire. So much the better. I will go and dry and warm myself, and then we shall see." Having taken the resolution, he approached the rocks, but as he was going to climb up, he felt something under the water that rose higher and higher and carried him into the air. He tried to escape, but it was too late, for to his extreme surprise, he found himself enclosed in a great net together with a swarm of fish of every size and shape, who were flapping and struggling like so many despairing souls. At the same moment, a fisherman came out of the cave. He was so ugly, so horribly ugly, that he looked like a sea monster. Instead of hair, his head was covered with a thick bush of green grass. His skin was green, his eyes were green, his long beard that came down to the ground was also green. He had the appearance of an immense lizard, standing on its hind paws. When the fisherman had drawn his net out of the sea, he exclaimed with great satisfaction, "Thank heaven! Again today I shall have a splendid feast of fish." "What a mercy that I am not a fish!" said Pinocchio to himself, regaining a little courage. The net full of fish was carried into the cave, which was dark and smoky. In the middle of the cave, a large frying pan full of oil was frying and sending out a smell of mushrooms that was suffocating. "Now we will see what fish we have taken," said the green fisherman, and putting into the net an enormous hand, so out of all proportion that it looked like a baker's shovel, he pulled out a handful of fish. "These fish are good," he said, looking at them and smelling them complacently, and after he had smelled them, he threw them into a pan without water. He repeated the same operation many times, and as he drew out the fish, his mouth watered, and he said, chuckling to himself, What good whiting! What exquisite sardines! These soles are delicious, and these crabs excellent. What dear little anchovies! The last to remain in the net was Pinocchio. No sooner had the fisherman taken him out than he opened his big green eyes with astonishment and cried, half frightened, "What species of fish is this? Fish of this kind I never remember to have eaten." And he looked at him again attentively, and having examined him well over, he ended by saying, "I know, he must be a crawfish." Pinocchio, mortified at being mistaken for a crawfish, said in an angry voice, "A crawfish indeed! Do you take me for a crawfish? What treatment! Let me tell you that I am a puppet." "A puppet?" replied the fisherman. "To tell the truth, a puppet is quite a new fish for me." "All the better. I shall eat you with greater pleasure." "Eat me? But will you understand that I am not a fish? Do you hear that I talk and reason as you do?" "That is quite true," said the fisherman, "and as I see that you are a fish possessed of the talent of talking and reasoning as I do, I will treat you with all the attention that is your due." "And this attention?" "In token of my friendship and particular regard, I will leave you the choice of how you would like to be cooked. Would you like to be fried in the frying pan, or would you prefer to be stewed with tomato sauce?" "To tell the truth," answered Pinocchio, "if I am to choose, I should prefer to be set at liberty and to return home." "You are joking. Do you imagine that I would lose the opportunity of tasting such a rare fish? It is not every day, I assure you, that a puppet fish is caught in these waters. Leave it to me. I will fry you in the frying pan with the other fish, and you will be quite satisfied. It is always consolation to be fried in company." At this speech, the unhappy Pinocchio began to cry and scream and to implore for mercy, and he said, sobbing, "How much better it would have been if I had gone to school! I would listen to my companions, and now I am paying for it." And he wriggled like an eel and made indescribable efforts to slip out of the clutches of the green fisherman. But it was useless. The fisherman took a long strip of rush, and having bound his hands and feet as if he had been a sausage, he threw him into the pan with the other fish. He then fetched a wooden bowl full of flour and began to flour them each in turn, and as soon as they were ready, he threw them into the frying pan. The first to dance in the boiling oil were the poor whitings. The crabs followed, then the sardines, then the soles, then the anchovies, and at last it was Pinocchio's turn. Seeing himself so near death, and such a horrible death, he was so frightened and trembled so violently that he had neither voice nor breath left for further entreaties. But the poor boy implored with his eyes. The green fisherman, however, without caring in the least, plunged him 5 or 6 times in the flour until he was white from head to foot and looked like a puppet made of plaster. Chapter 28. He returns to the fairy's house. Just as the fisherman was on the point of throwing Pinocchio into the frying pan, a large dog entered the cave, enticed there by the strong and savory odor of fried fish. "Get out!" shouted the fisherman threateningly, holding the floured puppet in his hand. But the poor dog, who was as hungry as a wolf, whined and wagged his tail, as much as to say, "Give me a mouthful of fish, and I will leave you in peace. Get out, I tell you!" repeated the fisherman, and he stretched out his leg to give him a kick. But the dog, who when he was really hungry would not stand trifling, turned upon him, growling and showing his terrible tusks. At that moment a little feeble voice was heard in the cave, saying entreatingly, "Save me, Alidoro! If you do not save me, I shall be fried!" The dog recognized Pinocchio's voice, and to his extreme surprise perceived that it proceeded from the flowered bundle that the fisherman held in his hand. So what do you think he did? He made a spring, seized the bundle in his mouth, and holding it gently between his teeth, he rushed out of the cave and was gone like a flash of lightning. The fisherman, furious at seeing a fish he was so anxious to eat snatched from him, ran after the dog, but he had not gone many steps when he was taken with a fit of coughing and had to give it up. Alidoro, when he had reached the path that led to the village, stopped and put his friend Pinocchio gently on the ground. "How much I have to thank you for," said the puppet. "There is no necessity," replied the dog. "You saved me, and I have now returned it. You know that we must all help each other in this world." "But how came you to come to the cave?" "I was lying on the shore, more dead than alive, when the wind brought to me the smell of fried fish. The smell excited my appetite, and I followed it up. If I had arrived a second later—" "Do not mention it," groaned Pinocchio, who was still trembling with fright. "Do not mention it. If you had arrived a second later, I should by this time have been fried, eaten, and digested. Brrr! It makes me shudder only to think of it." Alidoro, laughing, extended his right paw to the puppet, who shook it heartily in token of great friendship, and they then separated. The dog took the road home, and Pinocchio, left alone, went to a cottage not far off, and said to a little old man who was warming himself in the sun, "Tell me, good man, do you know anything of a poor boy called Eugene who was wounded in the head?" "The boy was brought by some fishermen to this cottage, and now—" "And now he is dead," interrupted Pinocchio with great sorrow. "No, he is alive and has returned to his home." "Not really? Not really?" cried the puppet, dancing with delight. "Then the wound was not serious?" "It might have been very serious and even fatal," answered the little old man, "for they threw a thick book bound in cardboard at his head." "And who threw it at him?" "One of his schoolfellows, a certain Pinocchio." "And who is this Pinocchio?" asked the puppet, pretending ignorance. "They say that he is a bad boy, a vagabond, a regular good-for-nothing." "Calumnies! All calumnies!" "Do you know this Pinocchio?" "By sight," answered the puppet. "And what is your opinion of him?" asked the little man. "He seems to be a very good boy, anxious to learn, and obedient and affectionate to his father and family." Whilst the puppet was firing off all these lies, he touched his nose and perceived that it had lengthened more than a hand. Very much alarmed, he began to cry out, "Don't believe, good man, what I have been telling you. I know Pinocchio very well, and I can assure you that he is a very bad boy, disobedient and idle. who instead of going to school runs off with his companions to amuse himself." He had hardly finished speaking when his nose became shorter and returned to the same size that it was before. "And why are you all covered with white?" asked the old man suddenly. "I will tell you. Without observing it, I rubbed myself against a wall which had been freshly whitewashed," answered the puppet, ashamed to confess that he had been floured like a fish prepared for the frying pan. "And what have you done with your jacket, your trousers, and your cap?" "I met with robbers who took them from me. Tell me, good old man, could you perhaps give me some clothes to return home in?" "My boy, as to clothes, I have nothing but a little sack in which I keep beans. If you wish for it, take it. There it is." Pinocchio did not wait to be told twice. He took the sack at once, and with a pair of scissors, he cut a hole at the end and at each side, and put it on like a shirt. And with this slight clothing, he set off for the village. But as he went, he did not feel at all comfortable, so little so, indeed, that for a step forward he took another backwards, and he said, talking to himself, "How shall I ever present myself to my good little fairy? What will she say when she sees me? Will she forgive me this second escapade? Oh, I am sure that she will not forgive me, and it serves me right, for I am a rascal. I am always promising to correct myself, and I never keep my word." When he reached the village, it was night and very dark. A storm had come on, and as the rain was coming down in torrents, he went straight to the fairy's house, resolved to knock at the door. But when he was there, his courage failed him, and instead of knocking, he ran away some 20 paces. He returned to the door a second time, and laid hold of the knocker, and trembling gave a little knock. He waited and waited. At last, after half an hour had passed, a window on the top floor was opened. The house was 4 stories high, and Pinocchio saw a big snail with a lighted candle on her head, looking out. She called to him, "Who is there at this hour?" "Is the fairy at home?" asked the puppet. "The fairy is asleep and must not be awakened. But who are you?" "It is I." "Who is I?" "Pinocchio." "And who is Pinocchio?" "The puppet who lives in the fairy's house." "Ah, I understand," said the snail. "Wait for me there. I will come down and open the door directly." "Be quick, for pity's sake, for I am dying of cold." "My boy, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." An hour passed, and then 2, and the door was not opened. Pinocchio, who was wet through and through, and trembling from cold and fear, at last took courage and knocked again, and this time he knocked louder. At this second knock, a window on the lower story opened, and the same snail appeared at it. "Beautiful little snail!" cried Pinocchio from the street. "I have been waiting for 2 hours, and 2 hours on such a bad night seem longer than 2 years. Be quick, for pity's sake." "My boy," answered the calm little animal, "my boy, I am a snail, and snails are never in a hurry." And the window was shut again. Shortly afterwards midnight struck, then 1 o'clock, then 2 o'clock, and the door remained still closed. Pinocchio at last, losing all patience, seized the knocker in a rage, intending to give a blow that would resound through the house. But the knocker, which was iron, turned suddenly into an eel, and slipping out of his hands, disappeared in the stream of water that ran down the middle of the street. "Ah, is that it?" shouted Pinocchio, blind with rage. "Since the knocker has disappeared, I will kick instead with all my might." And drawing a little back, he gave a tremendous kick against the house door. The blow was indeed so violent that his foot went through the wood and stuck, and when he tried to draw it back again, it was trouble thrown away, for it remained fixed like a nail that has been hammered down. Think of poor Pinocchio! He was obliged to spend the remainder of the night with one foot on the ground and the other in the air. The following morning at daybreak, the door was at last opened. The clever little snail had taken only 9 hours to come down from the 4th story to the house door. It is evident that her exertions must have been great. "What are you doing with your foot stuck in the door?" she asked the puppet. "It was an accident. Do try, beautiful little snail, if you cannot release me from this torture." "My boy, that is the work of a carpenter, and I have never been a carpenter." "Beg the fairy from me." "The fairy is asleep and must not be awakened." "But what do you suppose that I can do all day nailed to his door?" "Amuse yourself by counting the ants that pass down the street." "Bring me at least something to eat, for I am quite exhausted." "At once," said the snail. In fact, after 3 hours and a half, she returned to Pinocchio carrying a silver tray on her head. The tray contained a loaf of bread, a roast chicken, and 4 ripe apricots. "Here's the breakfast that the fairy has sent you." "Here's the breakfast that the fairy has sent you," said the snail. The puppet felt very much comforted at the sight of these good things, but when he began to eat them, what was his disgust at making the discovery that the bread was plaster, the chicken cardboard, and the 4 apricots painted alabaster. He wanted to cry. In his desperation he tried to throw away the tray and all that was on it, but instead, either from grief or exhaustion, he fainted away. When he came to himself, he found that he was lying on a sofa, and the fairy was beside him. "I will pardon you once more," the fairy said, "but woe to you if you behave badly a 3rd time." Pinocchio promised and swore that he would study, and that for the future he would always conduct himself well. And he kept his word for the remainder of the year. Indeed, at the examinations before the holidays, he had the honor of being the first in the school, and his behavior in general was so satisfactory and praiseworthy that the fairy was very much pleased and said to him, "Tomorrow your wish shall be gratified." "And that is?" "Tomorrow your wish shall be gratified." "And that is?" "Tomorrow you shall cease to be a wooden puppet, and you shall become a boy." No one who had not witnessed it could ever imagine Pinocchio's joy at this long-sighed-for good fortune. All his schoolfellows were to be invited for the following day to a grand breakfast at the fairy's house, that they might celebrate together the great event. The fairy had prepared 200 cups of coffee and milk, and 400 rolls cut and buttered on each side. The day promised to be most happy and delightful. But, unfortunately, in the lives of puppets, there is always a but that spoils everything. More to come. Would you like to make a difference? A gift of 5, 10, 15, or more would make a huge impact on my ability to keep this podcast going for you and upgrade my equipment. With your gift, we can grow this together because I want to make this the best I can for you. And frankly, you would help so much with far more than that. You'd be helping me change my life. Give today at ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. That's ko-fi.com/Kimberly Sue Iverson. Your presence here matters so much to me, so thank you for being here. I am beyond grateful you chose to spend this time with me. What are your thoughts? Share with me and start a conversation. Just don't be rude about it. Remember, kings and queens, everyone is fighting battles inside nobody can see. Who are you willing to see today? And who are you willing to let see you today? I hope someone can bring a smile to you today, or you can bring a smile to someone else. If you would like the chance for your story to be read, whether it's something you wrote, a story passed down in your family, or have a suggestion on a story to read, get in touch. Stories to read at KimberlySueIverson.com. That's stories to read at KimberlySueIverson.com. If you'd like to follow my socials, I would love to have you. Don't ever hesitate to comment and say hi either. Find me under at Kimberly Sue Iverson for most sites: Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and TikTok. There's also a Facebook page for Redhead Rewriting Reality. X is the only site I use Kimber Bites on. I also have a newsletter for my work. That's bit.ly/letters from Kimberly. bit.ly/letters from Kimberly. I always try to use the same profile picture and name no matter where I am, but you can always find my links on my link cave. That's KimberlySueIverson.com/link cave. That's LINKCAVE.